He wasn't just a revolutionary, he was a doctor, a philosopher, a writer, a man who inspired an entire generation to rise up. Che Guevara. You've heard his name, but how well do you really know him? Today, we're diving into 10 incredible and little-known facts about Che Guevara. Are you ready? Let's take a closer look at the legend. Fact 1. From asthmatic child to fearless fighter, Ernesto Guevara was born in June 1928 in the city of Rosario, Argentina. From an early age, he was forced to fight an invisible enemy, severe bronchial asthma. As a child, he sometimes spent nights struggling to breathe. His mother would rush to his bed with warm towels, rubbing his chest and praying with every breath he took. At times, his family wasn't sure he would survive, but Ernesto refused to give in. Doctors advised him to avoid physical exertion, to live quietly, but he stubbornly defied them. He played football, swam, and rode his bicycle for miles. His goal wasn't just to survive, it was to become strong. In his darkest moments, he used to say, "If I can live with these lungs, I can do anything." He was fighting a war against his own body, and that was his first revolution. That inner battle led him to study medicine. Perhaps his greatest desire was to relieve the suffering of others, because he knew what suffering felt like. Fact 2. The motorcycle journey. Road to Awakening. The year was 1952. Ernesto Guevara, just 23, was a medical student when he and his friend Alberto Granado made an unusual decision: to travel across South America on a motorcycle, an epic, unfiltered adventure across borders. But this wasn't just a geographical journey. It was the beginning of Che Guevara's awakening. They started out laughing and joking, but what they encountered on the road deeply shook young Ernesto. They came face to face with harsh poverty, people with nothing in their hands but dignity in their eyes, families with no beds to sleep on, laborers carrying rocks by day and pain by night, sick, forgotten, invisible people, people with no way out. In his diary, Che wrote, "What I saw left a hole inside me, a hole that only a revolution could fill." That journey didn't just change his perspective, it transformed him. He no longer just wanted to become a successful doctor. He wanted to fight for people's right to live, because he realized medicine couldn't heal everything. Sometimes the illness wasn't in the body, it was in the system. Fact 3. The brain and heart of the Cuban Revolution. A few years after Che Guevara traveled across South America on a motorcycle, he was no longer just a curious traveler. He had become an ideologically shaped revolutionary. During those years, he met with workers, peasants, and immigrants across various countries, witnessing firsthand the deep social divides created by capitalism. He was no longer just thinking, he was ready to act. In 1955, while in Mexico, Che met Fidel and Raul Castro. At the time, Fidel was preparing for an armed struggle against the Cuban dictator Batista. Che immediately connected with their cause. After their first meeting, he wrote, "I understand what these people are doing. I'm going to join them." His decision was clear and firm. He would fight for Cuba. In December 1956, with 82 other revolutionaries, Che boarded a small boat named Grandma and landed on the shores of Cuba. They were immediately pursued and attacked by Batista's forces. Many of his comrades were killed or captured, but Che survived and continued the struggle in the mountains. From there, a guerrilla war began in the Sierra Maestra Mountains. Che wasn't just a soldier, he was a doctor, a teacher, and a leader. He treated his comrades' wounds, taught them to read and write, and helped raise political awareness. He wasn't just handing out weapons, he was handing out ideas. Che was so disciplined and committed that he once told his fighters, "If you shoot a prisoner, I'll shoot you." This summed up his philosophy of war: to fight not out of cruelty, but for justice. By early 1959, after more than 2 years of relentless struggle, the Batista regime fell and the revolutionaries entered Havana victorious. Che was no longer just a fighter. He had become a national hero, the living symbol of the revolution. Fact 4. After the revolution, Che Guevara in government. After the revolution was won, many expected Che to return to the mountains and continue guerrilla life. But Che made a different choice. He knew that if the state didn't change, the regime would only change names. That's why Che took on several critical roles in the new Cuban government. He was first appointed head of the National Institute of Agrarian Reform. There, he redistributed thousands of hectares of land from wealthy landlords to peasants. For the first time in Cuban history, the peasant owned the land he farmed. Later, Che became the president of the National Bank of Cuba. Yes, the revolutionary guerrilla was now running the central bank. When asked by journalists why he took such a major role, he replied, "Because no one else wanted to, so I said, I will." He led by example. He had no luxury chair in his office, no fancy furniture. He didn't even take a salary. His clothes, his home, his lifestyle, everything was simple and humble. He said, "A revolutionary must live among the people." He tried to build a centralized and planned economy. One of his boldest ideas was the new man model. The belief that humans should be motivated not just by material rewards, but by moral values and collective goals. But real life proved much harder. Factory productivity dropped. Some reforms failed. Still, Che never gave in to corruption or abandoned his principles. To him, revolution wasn't just about changing rulers. He said, "If you change the system but don't change the people, you've changed nothing." Fact 5. A burning dream to ignite the world. Failure in Congo. When the Cuban Revolution triumphed in 1959, many thought the battle was over. But for Che Guevara, it was just the beginning. He believed revolution shouldn't happen in just one country. It had to spread across the entire world. As long as capitalism survived elsewhere, true freedom was still incomplete. Driven by this belief, Che resigned from all his government posts, left his family, and secretly exited Cuba. He even left Fidel Castro a handwritten letter that said, "Thank you for everything we've done together. I now go to fight on other battlefields." His first destination? Africa, the Congo. In 1965, Che traveled to the Democratic Republic of the Congo, hoping to help organize local guerrilla forces and lead them to victory. He believed Africa, like Latin America, was suffering under exploitation, and it was time to resist. But things didn't go as planned. He found the fighters lacking modern weapons, discipline, and political motivation. The local commanders were disorganized, divided, and often driven by personal agendas. Some soldiers didn't understand Che or take him seriously. Tropical diseases, language barriers, food shortages, and internal chaos completely derailed his mission. This was Che's first major failure. Eventually, he realized the fight couldn't continue. He quietly left the Congo, but the defeat didn't extinguish the fire inside him. In fact, he later wrote, "Sometimes defeat reminds you of who you are." Fact 6. Che Guevara was an active chess tournament organizer. Che Guevara didn't just fight with weapons, he fought with his mind. From a young age, Che had a deep passion for chess, and this game had a significant impact on his strategic thinking. After the Cuban Revolution, now holding a high-ranking government position, Che personally organized the 1960 Havana International Chess Tournament. But for Che, this wasn't just about competition. He wanted to spark an intellectual movement in Cuba. He sponsored the event, distributed chess sets from his own office, and closely followed every match. Che once said, "Chess forces a man to think. A revolutionary must think, must be able to calculate every move in advance." To him, chess was not just a game, it was a model for struggle, foreseeing the opponent's moves and acting strategically. He not only played the game himself, but also encouraged young people around him to play. For Che, every chessboard was a battlefield, and every move, a step in the fight for something greater. Fact 7. Che Guevara read books even on the battlefield. For him, intellect came before revolution. When people think of Che Guevara, they often imagine a rebel in the jungle, rifle in hand. But few know that he carried a weapon even more powerful than a gun: books. Because Che struggled with asthma and bronchitis in his childhood, he gravitated toward reading instead of physical activity. By the age of 10, he was already devouring philosophical and political texts. By his 20s, he had read and understood the works of Jean-Paul Sartre, Karl Marx, Lenin, Nietzsche, Freud, Dostoevsky, and Pablo Neruda. Even during guerrilla warfare, in the mountains of Bolivia, Che carried books alongside ammunition. His fellow fighters said, "While we collapsed from exhaustion at night, Che would read under gunfire." His reading list in the jungle included Mao Zedong's Guerrilla Tactics, writings by Jose Marti, and even works by Shakespeare. He didn't keep his knowledge to himself. He often shared ideas with his comrades, sometimes lifting their spirits with just a poem. Che believed a soldier must be nourished not only by bullets, but also by ideas. His intellectual depth made him more than just a fighter. He was a man of vision, shaping a new world with the words he read and the beliefs he held. Fact 8. Even facing death, Che wrote to his children, "Never abandon the struggle for justice." The world knows Che Guevara as a revolutionary, but very few know him as a father. Though he dedicated his life to struggle, he never forgot his children. He wrote to them often, letters filled with longing and tenderness. But these weren't just words of affection. They were the legacy of a revolutionary, final messages from a man who knew he might not return. The most touching of all was a farewell letter he wrote to his children just months before his death while surrounded by enemy forces in Bolivia. In that letter he wrote, "My dear children, I leave you no wealth, no house. I leave you only one thing, the spirit of struggle. Never remain silent in the face of injustice. Wherever there is oppression, you will find my spirit there." Even in his final moments, Che stayed true to his ideals and his love for his family. He was both a warrior and a loving father, two sides of a man who refused to surrender, not even to death. And that's what makes Che unforgettable. Not just the battles he fought, but the heart he carried through every one of them. Fact 9. Bolivia, Che's final breath. In many parts of the world, Che Guevara was already a living legend. He had triumphed in Cuba, failed in Congo, but Che hadn't given up. This time, he set out to spark a new revolution in the heart of Latin America, Bolivia. To Che, Bolivia was symbolic. Rich in natural resources, yet its people were poor and oppressed. It was the perfect candidate for a new Cuba. But there was one major difference. This time, Che was completely alone. He entered Bolivia under a false name, Ramon Benitez. He shaved his beard, changed his appearance, even carried a fake passport. In the remote mountains, he established a secret guerrilla base and began training a small group of fighters. But nothing came easy. The local peasants didn't support him. Many didn't even understand his ideology. Some even informed the military of Che's whereabouts. Meanwhile, the Bolivian army, trained and backed by the United States, began hunting him down. Every step he took was being tracked. On top of that, hunger, illness, and lack of supplies made the situation unbearable. In his diary, Che wrote, "The spirit of our men remains strong, but their bodies are collapsing. Hunger defeats everything." In October 1967, near the village of La Higuera, Che and a few comrades were ambushed. He was wounded in battle and captured alive. Unarmed, injured, and alone, he was locked in a small schoolroom. He spent one last night there, quiet and proud. The next day, October 9th, 1967, Che Guevara was coldly executed by Bolivian soldiers. His most famous final words, "Shoot me. You're only killing a man, not an idea." After his death, his body was displayed in a hospital. The government wanted to show that the revolution was dead, but ironically, the photo of his lifeless body, his eyes still open, his face peaceful, became a symbol of resurrection for millions. Fact 10. The legend born after death. Che becomes a symbol. When Che Guevara was executed in 1967, perhaps his killers thought they had ended a chapter of history. But the opposite happened. That day wasn't the end. It was the birth of a legend. Photos of Che's dead body with eyes open and gaze fixed toward the sky shocked the world. There was a strange calm and dignity on his face, a man unafraid of death. One image in particular, the famous Guerrillero Heroico portrait taken by Alberto Corda, became one of the most reproduced and iconic images in human history. In that portrait, Che stands with long hair, wearing a beret, looking far into the distance, a symbol of defiance and dream. The photo spread like wildfire, on posters, t-shirts, flags, walls, and into the hearts of millions. But why? Because people didn't just see a man. They saw the spirit of rebellion, the belief in justice, and a soul willing to die for a dream. After his death, Che's ideas ignited once more. From Paris to Buenos Aires, from Havana to Cairo, young people chanted his name and followed his vision. During the 1968 student movements, Che's image led countless marches. He was no longer just a Latin American icon. He became the face of revolution worldwide. In fact, many people knew Che's face more than his life story. If there's a universal image of a revolutionary, it's him. What's most fascinating is, he never sought fame. He wanted change. But his message was so powerful, even death couldn't silence it. Sometimes a man dies in body, but is born again in the hearts of millions. Che Guevara's life wasn't just about guns and revolutions. It was a story of ideals, struggle, and sacrifice. If you learned something from this video and want more stories like this, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and share it with your friends. See you in the next video. History keeps speaking.